Awesome. Let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join this tour spaces with Max Holloway from Xenophon Labs. So essentially, what we're doing today is have Max kind of walk through his proposal on our DUIDX forums on explaining why he thinks the safety staking module should be wound down. So we'll get him to introduce himself, understand what Xenophon Lab does, walk through some of the grants that Xenophon Labs has been working on, and literally just explain a little bit more about like this proposal. So um, we do have some pre-populated questions, and then I'll open the floor up to the community to ask some questions as well. Hopefully, it's going to be a fluid conversation. So, Max, thanks for joining again. Could you just give a quick introduction about yourself, Xenophon Labs, and what you guys have been up to?
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you. And thanks for having me on. So, yeah, I'm Max Holloway. I run Xenophon Labs, which is a small, high conviction research firm, and we mostly focus on technical research problems for Web3 organizations. If you've been in the DYDX community for a while, you may have seen us around. We've been here for almost a full year doing work with DYDX. We were part of the very first round of the DYDX grants program, and we've been active contributors through there ever since. And yeah, I mean, doing our best to bring high context like community contributions to the DYDX protocol. So some of our work has included development on trading tools, exchange risk modeling, research on the trader rewards mechanism, and research on the liquidity staking module, and most recently, as with this proposal, research on the safety staking module as well. So yeah, it's a little bit of our background. I've had the pleasure of working with some awesome collaborators as well. So it isn't just me working on this stuff. And I really encourage anyone who wants to dig deeply into any of this research to read the actual papers that we publish along with the forum posts, because they go into a lot more detail than we will be able to get into on this Twitter Spaces.
Nice. Thanks for the TLDR. And I guess like it would be super helpful if you can walk through at a high level what you're proposing. Because I don't think everyone has had the time or opportunity to kind of review what you've posted on the forums as well as review the paper that you guys have created as well. So could you give like a high level overview of what you're proposing on the forums?
Yeah, sure. If it's fine, I mean, maybe I can take a couple minutes to kind of explain this because there are a couple moving pieces.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know I'll just start with what the safety staking module is. So there's a safety staking module on DYDX, which is a pool of DYDX tokens, which are used, which are meant to be used in the case of a shortfall event on the exchange. And examples of shortfall events might be, if there was an exploit that led to a lot of user funds being taken out of the exchange, then there are these, I guess, procedures or these processes in place through which the protocol would be able to make users whole again. Um, and one of them is the safety staking module. So you can think of it kind of like an insurance fund, where if something bad happens, then all the funds in that insurance fund could be used to pay back depositors into the exchange. And in exchange for the risk that people take when depositing into this insurance fund, right? Because whenever they deposit, there's a chance that they'll get slashed, so to speak, and you know, if there were a shortfall event. Um, in order to compensate them for this risk that they're taking and also the cost of their capital, the DYDX, I guess there are DYDX token emissions that go towards paying folks basically to put their DYDX into the safety staking module. So uh, I'm sure we can link to more specific docs on the safety staking module, but I guess I'll kind of move on from just what that is. And so in our research, we looked into what the safety staking module is and how well it satisfies the goals that are laid out for it. And we found that there are two main goals for what the safety staking module. There are two main goals for the safety staking module. One of them is that we want to align the insurers of the protocol with the protocol itself, which is something that you can do with the DYDX token. Whenever people deposit their token, they may make governance decisions that since they have a lot of skin in the game, they may make governance decisions that prioritize security and well-being of the exchange. So that's one of the perks. But the main perk of the safety staking module is that it's supposed to provide insurance in the case of a shortfall event. So in our research, we looked at these two goals and asked how well is the safety staking module as it stands today achieving these two goals. So starting with the first reason, that alignment between insurers of the protocol and the protocol itself, we found that there actually are conflicts that can arise whenever you are providing DYDX token and also voting on governance decisions, right? Because you have whenever you stake into this safety staking module, you retain your voting power. So there's a chance, right, that if something went up for a vote for the safety staking module to be slashed, there's a lot of DYDX in there that people may not want to have slashed, right? So that's one of the objectives of the safety staking module. We felt like was pretty dubiously being satisfied with if DYDX were the asset being staked. And more importantly, we looked at how well the safety staking module was achieving that second goal of ensuring in the case of a shortfall event. And here's where we defined a term called insurance power, which is basically the realistic amount of value that the safety staking module would have at the time that it would be used. So in the case where there was massive turmoil on the exchange, right, and you needed to resort to something like a safety staking module in order to pay back protocol debts, in a case like that, it's most likely not the right time to be paying people in DYDX token, right? There are a number of historical events after exploits where when you look at the value of a token, it goes down quite a bit, and it's perhaps the worst possible time to sell it to try to pay off debts of the protocol. So we found that what we call this insurance power, right, the realistic amount you'd be able to sell this DYDX for in order to pay back depositors of the exchange, it's actually severely lower than the nominal value of the DYDX that's currently in that module. And we found this particularly concerning. And so we looked like with this in mind, right? We looked at both the objectives of the safety staking module and said, okay, neither of these are really being satisfied super well, in our opinion. So how would we change it to how would we change how the safety staking module works in order to make it more compatible with these goals? And what we arrived at were a number of different possible solutions. One of those solutions would be to replace the DYDX in the safety staking module with USDC. And instead, you just have a USDC based, essentially like an insurance fund for backstopping the protocol in the case of a shortfall event. So that's one of the options. The other option is to use Balancer, where you could create a Balancer pool that has some combination of, let's say, USDC and DYDX, and then so Xenophon Labs would create that Balancer pool, and then people would stake that liquidity, that Balancer LP token into the safety staking module, and that way, they would. That has a number of benefits. I encourage people to read more into it. In the actual paper. And the final possible avenue going forward that we said is maybe it's just best in the short term to get rid of the emissions that are going to the safety staking module in the first place. And so, while long term we think that insurance is a very important piece of the protocol, I think it's great for user experience to know that their funds are being insured. Uh, right now, it's actually not going to be possible to implement any of these ideas that we had, such as the balancer idea or the USDC based idea. And right now, it may just be best that we get rid of the emissions that are going towards the safety staking module because, as we argue, it's not a particularly useful place. It's not a very useful way of spending token. So yeah, that's the high level overview of the paper and the recommendation that we're giving.
Gotcha. Thanks. That's super helpful. I guess like we can start with a few questions. So feel free to kind of like request to speak, and I'll bring you guys up to ask your questions to Max. But to start, like from a numbers perspective, right? You mentioned that the safety module is kind of like an insurance pool for the protocol in event of kind of like a black swan event. So right now, our safety module sits at 37 million DYDX staked, and our TVL is roughly 367 million. So it's roughly 10%, if I'm not wrong, of the total TVL. So it seems like the protocol doesn't necessarily need its own insurance pool to be equal to the entire value of the TVL. And perhaps we should actually be looking at like a third party insurance solution, which would make more sense than self insurance because it's going to be far more capital efficient. So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, should we actually be looking at other insurance providers like Nexus Mutual, for example, instead of doing it internally?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a wonderful question, and I actually just completely agree that that would be a lot better than self-hosting this. One benefit of doing it on our own is that we don't need to pay a fee to a third party. However, I will say a lot of the most of the most a lot of the cost of this running this module is paying for people's cost of capital, right? Like they actually are taking their money and they need to put it into this module, and they don't have like other things that they can do with it. And in the case of a mutual or an insurance fund, that is able to cross insure across a number of different, among a number of different customers, then that is a lot more capital efficient, as you mentioned. And so the question is just like, okay, why aren't we doing this right now? Well, it kind of comes down to the existing insurance providers. I can see two ways of going about this, and we didn't find a good way, like a good practical solution for this. And so, one of the ways that you could go about this, as you mentioned, is something like Nexus Mutual. However, if you look at the overall, the liabilities of DYDX, Nexus Mutual is significantly smaller, and so you can imagine insuring some portion of the I guess of the deposits that are in DYDX. However, you wouldn't be able to come anywhere near the total amount of deposits. So we didn't think that it was a very scalable solution. I don't quote me on this, but I looked, Nexus Mutual was sitting around maybe 100 million TVL. Uh, and so, if we were to even insure a third or a fourth, I guess, of the DYDX protocol with Nexus, we would be doubling the size of their TVL, right, or their outstanding like notional. And so, yeah, like it's something that we would maybe be too big to do in a meaningful way. And obviously, it would destroy the benefits of their own cross insurance, right? Because if half of their, if half their risk was on a particular protocol, their whole idea of doing a capital efficient mutual kind of evaporates, right? Because they have so much risk with respect to one customer. So does that kind of make sense? I think it's more of a practical question. Like, how would we practically do this? I think that's the bigger concern than me having an issue with the in theory idea of using a third party service provider for this.
Gotcha. Thanks for pointing it out. I just looked it up really quickly. Nexus Mutual's total TPL stands at 180 million. So you're right. It's gonna just like complete their risks on just one protocol. Cool. So TokenFi has requested to ask a question. Let me bring you up. And cool. TokenFi, you should be able to speak now.
Hey Max, Jason from Blockchain at Columbia here. So I have a question about um, eliminating the safety staking pool, as you mentioned. Seems like you're leaning towards for the interim time being. How risky is that to not have a staking pool? Is there any timeline in mind for how long the protocol won't have it? And yeah, I'm just curious on the risk you think that is being taken on versus having a poor staking pool, poor insurance versus no insurance at all.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Thank you for bringing it up. I think obviously, right, having even if the insurance power of the staking pool right now is like much lower than its, I guess, nominal value right now, you're right that it's still non-zero. The question is just should we be paying that much for what we're getting? Um, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly how to go about it, right? Because I would have to put some probability or some estimate on the probability of the protocol being exploited or having a shortfall event for larger than the amount that could be covered. I think right now I believe DYDX trading uses the liquidation whenever they perform a liquidation. They use I suppose the profits that they get from those liquidations for for their own version of like an insurance pool, and it has I think somewhere around 17 million or 18 million USDC in it currently. So for small exploits or for small shortfall events, that should definitely be ample to cover for it. And then in addition to that, we have the treasury that would be able to. I mean, this obviously is not ideal, but there are other ways that we could go about paying back for a shortfall event in the case that occurs. Of course, like that would need to be decided by governance, and so I'm not claiming that those funds necessarily would be used. But yeah, so that's the idea. I don't know if you have any more questions.
Yeah, so that makes sense. You briefly mentioned that like 18 million, DYDX or USDC for a small shortfall event. Do you have like a number in mind for what would be a good insurance fund for a larger shortfall event? Or like what the goal is in the future?
Honestly, no, because right, that it's a pretty challenging problem to find what basically our estimate of the probability is that you know, or like basically the distribution of possible attacks, right? Like that's pretty hard to estimate, and we didn't really want to put numbers on that because we couldn't come up with any really good methodology for doing so. I think what would be really nice is if there was an external service provider that was able to ensure a very substantial amount of the protocol, or to create other. But I don't know. Like there are other decisions that could be made at the protocol level, such as limiting how much can be withdrawn per time, or putting caps on that. I mean, a lot of that would come at the expense of user experience. So I'm not recommending that, but necessarily. But there are a number of ways where you could like limit the bleeding, so to speak, on a shortfall event, and that would allow us to put tighter, I guess, worst case bounds on how large a shortfall event would be. But no, I don't have it. Like the best methodology that I could give you right now for how much we should insure would be like, well, if it's cheap enough, right, and it's not that risky to actually have funds on DYDX, then why don't we try to insure as much as possible? Up to the TVL. But yeah, this is as much like it requires some estimation, and we didn't provide any methodology for doing that well.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for the question. So we have another question here, and that is, what are your exact recommendations on the replacements of the current safety staking module? I know you briefly talked about like having a balancer pool or creating a USDC safety staking pool, but can you just talk through like the 4 recommendations that you put up? What are some of the pros and cons of each?
Yeah, sure. So I'm happy to start with the USDC safety staking module. So the USDC safety staking module would have the benefit of matching the exact liabilities of the exchange. So presumably, if the exchange is still using USDC as its collateral, as basically as its as the collateral asset that traders use in their margin accounts, if it continued to use USDC, then having a token that matches the liability of the exchange is a pretty clean solution for what you should use as the staking asset, right? Because whenever you do that, you're no longer required to estimate that conversion that it would take in order to make folks whole again in the case of a shortfall event. So I think that's a pretty powerful and clean solution. And again, like I said, we also considered the balancer case, in which if folks who were depositing into the safety staking pool wanted to also earn liquidity provider fees, for instance. That's something that you wouldn't be able to do if you were just putting USDC into the pool. And so, like, if we are really concerned about capital efficiency, we could start looking into things like Balancer. Another nice benefit of putting in a DYDX USDC Balancer LP token is also that you're able to retain some exposure to DYDX. So this was seen partially as a compromise, right, between what we have today, which is a fully DYDX safety staking module, and what in the fully USDC safety staking module that was also proposed as a potential solution. You could imagine the balancer pool being achieving this trade-off where you have some DYDX, you have some USDC, and the added benefit is that you're also able to earn fees from it. So that was our thinking with the balancer one, and yeah. So those are the main two that we seriously considered. Those are the main two solutions that we seriously considered for for going forward for the safety staking pool.
Got it. Thanks, Max. I encourage everyone to kind of like go onto the forums and click on the link, which links out to the paper that Xenophon Labs has written. It's super detailed, and kind of goes through all these details in great fashion. So yep, encourage you guys all to check that out. And I guess like what you're proposing right now is to wind down the safety module, right? So just be a little bit more specific about that. Are you intending to literally, remove this pool in entirety, or are you looking to just like stop the emissions right now?
Yeah, so that's a really important question. So for anyone who's interested in the implementation of this, it's extremely simple. So since it's a smart contract, like it is immutable, and it's not really a good idea. I think even if we could, it's not a good idea to actually fully destroy that smart contract. So instead, what it's going to look like is we're just going to stop forwarding. We would stop forwarding emissions from token emissions to the stakers in that pool. So it's actually as simple as that. Is our current proposal.
Got it. Yeah. I think like a few community members have actually expressed their concerns that it's going to be extremely risky to just remove the safety pool in its entirety. I guess like last question on my side, and then we can again open it up to the floor is with regards to timing. And we're actually looking at a V4 launch by the end of the year or Q1 next year. So do you think like there is any implications to V4 if we do wind down the safety staking module right now?
It seems pretty separate. I mean, of course, the amount of, I guess, looking from the liabilities of the protocol, I don't know how the total outstanding amount of deposits will change going to V4. I don't know if there are going to be more or fewer assets on the exchange. But there's nothing really obvious that I see that means that we should wait to do this until V4. I haven't seen really any super hard connection there.
Gotcha. Thanks. Cool. All right. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to request to speak, and I'll bring you up on stage.
Hey, Max. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yep. Loud and clear, James.
Awesome. Sounds good. Max, thanks for coming on. It's good to have you here, and obviously thanks for all the great work you've done in grants V1 and V1.5 so far. Just a quick one, just to allow me to understand it a little bit better. Obviously, with DYDX trading and V4 coming up, there's obviously still some discussion around tokenomic changes. There's a number of posts on Commonwealth recently. I know DYDX trading and yourself are kind of looking into this and researching. I guess, are these proposed changes translatable, or will this require, I guess, another thought and in-depth research sort of coming around to sort of Q2 next year?
I think it's a good question. I think it's similar to the last question, unless I'm understanding wrong. Like, I think that this is mostly separable from V4, right? Like the interesting components of V4, right? It being on an app chain, all the new tech and like infra behind the scenes. I think that this is fairly separate. So I don't. I mean, I can speak honestly on my end. I don't think this is going to create any more work for Xenophon Labs. I think if anything, it's going to create less work for us going forward. We won't have to, if we were to get rid of the safety staking module, we wouldn't have to worry about doing any more research on it. And so I don't foresee us doing any more work on this with respect to our token design grant either. Yeah. Let me know. I don't know if I quite answered your question, so let me know if you have any other components of it.
No, that makes sense. Thanks for that, Max.
Cool. Yeah, as mentioned, if you guys still have any questions for Max, feel free to request to speak, and I'll bring you up on stage. Oh, great. We have TokenFi again. Let me just invite him up. Hey, TokenFi, you're good to go.
Hi, so I have another quick question. So to me, I could be off base here, but getting rid of insurance completely and getting rid of the safety module for a time being seems kind of concerning. Have you thought about lowering the APR so we're not paying as much, but at the same time we still do have a safety module in place where people will be earning some yield for their DYDX?
Yeah. Do you want me to focus on giving people yield on their DYDX, or do you want me to focus on the insurance power?
The insurance power.
Okay, cool. Then I'll ignore the part about yield on their DYDX. So basically, I think for insurance power, there is still between $17 and $18 million in USDC that could be paid for a shortfall event at the drop of a hat. Like that's it. There's a fund specifically for that. After that, there's still a lot of token that could be contributed, perhaps from the treasury, in the case of a shortfall event. And yeah, I don't want to speculate on what DYDX trading would do, but I also want to say it seems, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I'm actually just going to completely avoid that. But yeah. So yes, there will be less insurance power for the protocol. Is the short answer. But I don't agree that it's going to go to zero. There's still at least going to be between $17 and $18 million for smaller shortfall events.
Thank you.
Cool. We'll just give everyone else maybe a couple of 3 more minutes to request to ask a question. If not, we can call it a day.
I saw that Chris Black responded to this tweet, so I was really hoping we get him on.
Would he? Let me check it out really quick.
Max, just separately, not to do with the safety staking module, more to do with Xenophon and yourself. Anything exciting coming up over the next few months from you guys? Are you working on other projects as well? What's going on in your world?
Yeah, so we're really excited. We're working on the DYDX V4 token design. So that's coming from like a community perspective, right? Because what happens with the DYDX token is a community decision going into V4. So yeah, I mean, it's going to look like a lot more of the more quantitative work that we've done before, looking into the mechanisms that exist on DYDX today, seeing potential new ones that we could implement going forward, looking into some of the corner cases of what running your own app chain might look like once you move into public and shared infrastructure rather than centralized hosted stuff. Comes with a lot of interesting problems. So yeah, we're really excited working on that and thinking about DYDX quite a bit. So yeah.
Nice. Cool. I guess like just back to the proposal. If we don't have any other further questions, maybe we can talk a little bit more about the governance process. So, um, Max, can you just quickly talk through like when you're looking to potentially move this towards like a snapshot poll, and then maybe I can just talk through the community and the the audience here on like what the process is moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Since I think some people may be tuning in or just starting to think about this proposal now, I'd like to at least give till Friday to wait and see if there's a lot more discussion. And if there isn't much more discussion on it, then I'm looking to bring this to a snapshot proposal on Monday.
Nice. Cool. Right. So just to touch a little bit more about how the implementation will go post the snapshot. So the snapshot is going to run for roughly 4 days, and this is off chain. So once we get a sentiment from the community on how the vote goes, if the vote supports the winding down of the safety module by um, reducing or eliminating the emissions rate, we will move this on towards an on-chain vote, and this would be uh, a short time lock vote where we will be removing the rewards rate for the safety staking module. And we should be looking at an implementation timeline of roughly 2 to 3 weeks from start to end, if the snapshot and on-chain vote moves forward nicely. So that's just kind of like a TLDR of how the proposal is going to move forward from a governance process standpoint. And it seems like we don't have any other questions. We don't have anyone else requesting to ask any questions. So with that, I guess we can end it off. Thanks, Max, for again joining and answering all of the questions that the community has. Thanks everyone for tuning in, no matter where you are. Again, this entire conversation is actually recorded, so we will transcribe it and post it onto our blog. If you guys have any further questions for Max or the DYDX team, feel free to revisit the forums and post your questions there, or DM us on Twitter, right? If that something that you prefer to do. And with that, I guess like we can end off this tour spaces. Again, thanks everyone for joining, and thanks Max.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks everyone. Have a good day.